Section 5 of Greatheart by Ethel M. Dell. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. Apollo. The salon was a blaze of lights and many shifting colours. The fantastic crowd that trooped thither from the salle à manger was like a host of tropical flowers. The talking and laughter nearly drowned the efforts of the string band in the far corner. Scott, in ordinary evening dress, stood near the door, talking to an immense Roman emperor, looking, by contrast, even smaller and more insignificant than usual. Yet a closer observation would have shown that the same instinctive dignity of bearing characterized them both, utterly unlike though they were. Yet in this respect it was not difficult to trace their brotherhood. Though moulded upon lines so completely dissimilar, they bore the same indelible stamp, the stamp of good birth, which can never be attained by such as have it not. Sir Eustace Studley was the handsomest man in the room. His imperial costume suited his somewhat arrogant carriage. He looked like a man born to command. His keen eyes glanced hither and thither with an eagle-like intensity that missed nothing. He seemed to be on the watch for someone. "Who is it?" asked Scott with a smile. "The lady of the rink?" The black brows went up haughtily for a moment, then descended in an answering smile. "She is the only woman I've seen here yet that is worth looking at," he observed. "Don't you be too sure of that," said Scott. "I can show you a little Italian peasant girl who is well worth your august consideration. I think you ought to bestow a little favour on her, as you have each chosen to assume the same nationality." Sir Eustace laughed. "A protégée of yours, eh? That little brown girl, I suppose. Charming, no doubt, my dear fellow, but ordinary. Distinctly ordinary." "You haven't seen her yet," said Scott. "You had your back to her in the salle à manger." "Where is she, then? You had better find her before the beautiful Miss Devine makes her appearance. I don't mind giving her a dance or two, but you must take her off my hands if we don't get on." "I will certainly do that," said Scott, in his quiet voice, that seemed to veil a touch of irony. "I believe she is in the vestibule now. No, here she is." Dina, with laughing lips and sparkling eyes, had just ventured to the door with Billy. "We'll just peep," she said to her brother, in the gay young tones that penetrated so much further than she realised. "But I shall never dare to dance. Why, I've never even seen the inside of a ballroom before, and as to dancing with a real live man—" She broke off as she caught sight of the two brothers standing together near the entrance. Eustace turned his restless eyes upon her, gave her a swift, critical glance, and muttered something to Scott. The latter at once stepped forward, receiving a smile so radiant that even Eustace was momentarily dazzled. The little brown girl certainly had points. "May I introduce my brother?" said Scott. "Sir Eustace Studley, Miss—" "I am afraid I don't know your surname." "Sketchy," murmured Eustace, as he bowed. But Dina only laughed her ringing, merry laugh. "Of course you don't know. How could you? Our name is Bathurst. I'm Dina, and this is Billy. I'm years older than he is, of course." She gave Eustace a shy glance. "How do you do?" "She's just 30, announced Billy, in shrill, cracked tones. "She's just pretending to be young tonight, but she ain't young really. You should see her without her war paint." The music became somewhat more audible at this point. Eustace bent slightly, looking down at the girl, with eyes that were suddenly soft as velvet. "They are beginning to dance," he said. "May I have the pleasure? It's a pity to lose time." Her red lips smiled delighted assent. She laid her hand with a feathery touch upon the arm he offered. "Oh, how lovely!" she said, and slid into his hold like a giddy little waterfowl taking to its own beloved element. "Well, I'm jiggered," said Billy. And she's never even danced with a man, except of course me, before. Live and learn, said Scott. He watched the couple go up the great room and saw that, as he had suspected, Dina was an exquisite dancer. Her whole being was merged in movement. She was an instrument in the hand of a skilled player. Sir Eustace Studley was an excellent dancer too, though he didn't often trouble himself to dance as perfectly as he was dancing now. It was not often that he had a partner worthy of his best, and it was a semi-conscious habit of his never voluntarily to give better than he received. But this little gypsy girl of Scott's discovery called forth all his talent. She did not want to talk, she only wanted to dance, to spend herself in a passion of dancing that was an ecstasy beyond all speech. She was as sensitive as a harp string to his touch. She was music, she was poetry, she was charm. The witchery of her began to possess him. Her instant response to his mood, her almost uncanny interpretation thereof, became like a spell to his senses. From wonder he passed to delight, and from delight to an almost feverish desire for more. He swayed her to his will with a nigh savage exaltation, and she gave herself up to it so completely, so freely, so unerringly, that it was as if her very individuality had melted in some subtle fashion and become part of his. And to the man there came a moment of sheer intoxication, as though he drank and drank of a sparkling, inspiriting wine that lulled him, that thrilled him, that enslaved him. It was just when the sensation had reached its height that the music suddenly quickened for the finish. That brought him very effectually to earth. He ceased to dance and led her aside. She turned her bright face to him for a moment. In her eyes the dazed, incredulous look of one awaking from an enthralling dream. "Oh, can't we dance it out?" she said, as if she pleaded against being aroused. He shook his head. "I never dance to a finish. It is too much like the clown's turn after the transformation scene. It is bathos on top of the superb. At least it would be in this case. Who in wonder taught you to dance like that?" Dina opened her eyes a little wider, and gave him the homage of shy admiration. But she met a look in return that amazed her, that sent the blood in a wild, unreasoning race to her heart. For those eyes of burning, ardent blue had suddenly told her something that no eyes had ever told her before. It was incredible, but true. Homage had met homage. Aye, and more than homage. There was mastery in his look, but there was also wonder, and a curious species of half-grudging reverence. She had amazed him. This witch with the sparkling eyes that shone so alluringly under the scarlet kerchief. She had swept him, as it were, with a fan of flame. She had made him live, and he had pronounced her ordinary. "I have always loved to dance," she said in answer to his almost involuntary question. "Do you like my dancing? I'm so glad." "Like it?" He laughed with an odd shamefacedness. "I could dance with you the whole evening. But I should probably end by making a fool of myself, like a man who has had too much champagne." Dina laughed. She had an exhilarating sense of having achieved a conquest undreamed of. She also was feeling a little giddy, a little uncertain of the ground under her feet. "Do you know," she said, dropping her eyes instinctively before the fiery intensity of his, "I've never danced with a man before. I was a little afraid, just at first, lest you should find me gawky." "Ye gods," said Sir Eustace. "And you have really never danced with a man before? Tell me, how did you like it?" "It was heavenly," said Dina, drawing a deep breath. "Will you dance with me again?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." "The very next dance?" She nodded again. Yes. And again after that? Said Sir Eustace. She threw him a glance, half shy, half daring. Don't you think it might be too much for you? He laughed. I'll risk it if you will. She turned towards him with a small, confidential gesture. What about Rose Devine? She said. Don't you want to dance with her? Oh, presently, he said. She'll keep. Dina broke into her high, sweet laugh. And what about all my other partners? She said, with more assurance. He bent to her. They must keep too. Seriously, you don't want to dance with any other fellow, do you? I'm not a bit serious, said Dina. Do you? He insisted. She lifted her eyes momentarily. You don't, he insinuated. She surrendered without conditions. Of course I don't. Then you mustn't, he said. Consider yourself booked to me for tonight, and when you're not dancing with me, you can rest. Sit out with Scott, if you like. Will you do that? Why? Whispered Dina. Again her heart was beating very fast. She wondered why. He answered her with an impetuosity that seemed to carry her along with it. Because your dancing is superb, magnificent, and I want to keep it for myself. It may not be the same when you've danced with another man. A flower fresh plucked is always sweeter than one someone else has worn. Dina's hands clasped each other unconsciously. She had never dreamed that Apollo could so stoop to favour her. I will do as you like, she murmured after a moment, but I don't suppose for an instant that anyone else would want to dance with me. I don't know anyone else. He smiled. I'm glad of that. It would be sheer sacrilege for you to dance with a young oaf who didn't know how. It's a bargain, then. I'll give you all I can. You mustn't tell, of course. Oh, I won't tell, laughed Dina. He gave her his arm. They are tuning up. We won't lose a minute. I always like a clear floor before the rabble begin. He led her to the top of the room, stood for a moment, then, as the music began, caught her to him, and they floated once more into the shining, enchanted mazes of their dreamland. And Dina danced as one inspired, for it seemed to her that her feet moved upon air as though winged. Apollo had drawn her up to Olympus, and she drifted in his arm, in spheres unknown, far above the clouds. End of section 5. Read by Helena Dunstan. Oxford, February 2022.